The road is a lonely place. It's a cliché because it's true. For 15 years, the cab of my Kenworth W900 has been more of a home to me than any house with a foundation. I've seen sunrises over the Rockies that would make a preacher weep and sunsets in the Mojave that felt like the end of the world. I know the rhythm of the road, the hum of the tires on asphalt, the particular hiss of the air brakes on a cold morning. It's a life of solitude, punctuated by fleeting connections at truck stops over burnt coffee and greasy bacon. But I wasn't truly alone. I had Sarah. Sarah was my anchor in a world that was constantly moving. Her voice over the phone was the lighthouse that guided me home. Every trip started with her packing me a cooler of sandwiches and ended with the promise of falling into our bed, the scent of her hair a welcome antidote to 1,000 miles of diesel fumes. We had a system, a ritual. I'd call from the road every night at 9 p.m. sharp, no matter what time zone I was in. We'd talk about her day at the library, my day dodging four-wheelers driven by texters, and we'd always end with, "Drive safe, Jack, and be home soon, my love." She was my rock, my whole world. And then there was Dave. Dave was the brother I never had. We came up together, earning our commercial driver's licenses in the same dusty lot in Bakersfield. We drove for the same carrier for a decade before I went independent. If my rig broke down in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, Dave was the first guy I'd call. He'd drop his own haul and drive 500 miles with a spare part if I needed it. We had an unbreakable bond, forged in shared hardships and governed by the unwritten code of the road. You always have your brother's back. So, when Dave fell on hard times a year ago, a messy divorce that cleaned him out, I didn't hesitate. He was struggling to get back on his feet and get his own rig running again. "Jack, man, I'm in a bind," he'd said over the phone, his voice strained. "I got a line on a few local jobs, short hauls, but my truck's a mess. I know it's a huge ask, but while you're on your downtime at home, any chance I could use your rig? Just for a day or two here and there. I'll cover fuel, maintenance, everything. It'll keep me from going under." Of course, I said yes. What else could I do? This was Dave. You don't leave your brother stranded. The beast, as I called my Kenworth, was my livelihood, my pride and joy. But letting Dave use it felt right. It was just sitting in the long-term lot while I was home with Sarah for my 2 weeks off anyway. "You're a lifesaver, Jack. I owe you one," he'd said, genuine relief in his voice. "Forget it," I told him. "That's what we do." And so began our new arrangement. During my 2 weeks home every couple of months, Dave would occasionally take the beast out for a day, maybe 2, a quick run to a neighboring state and back. It seemed perfect. I was helping my best friend, and he was being a ghost, leaving the truck back in the lot, cleaned and fueled up before I even knew it was gone. He'd leave cash for the mileage in the glove box. It was a system built on absolute trust. A trust I would soon learn was as fragile as a deer in a high beam. The first thread unraveled on a Tuesday morning in our kitchen. I was on my downtime, enjoying a rare, slow breakfast with Sarah. I was scrolling through my business account statements on my laptop, the mundane task of categorizing expenses. And then I saw it. A charge from the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. $100. I frowned. "That's weird," I muttered. "What is?" Sarah asked, not looking up from her book. "I got a toll charge from Virginia, from 2 days ago." She finally looked up, a slight, unreadable flicker in her eyes. "Oh, must be a mistake. You should call them." "Yeah, I guess." But it gnawed at me. I hadn't been east of the Mississippi in 6 months. My last haul was a straight shot from LA to Seattle and back. I was home with her, 2 days ago. I pulled up my EZ-Pass statement online. There it was, plain as day. My transponder, number 7884B, crossing the Chesapeake at 3:15 a.m. on Sunday. My first thought was a system glitch. My second was fraud. My third, colder and sharper, was Dave. I remembered he'd texted me on Saturday saying he was taking the beast for a quick produce run. I pulled up my GPS fleet tracker, a service I paid for mostly for insurance purposes. I rarely checked it. The archives were meticulous. I clicked the date. My heart started to pound a low, heavy rhythm against my ribs. There was the trip. The beast had left its lot near my house late Saturday night. It had driven east, all the way to the Virginia coast. And then it had come back. But it hadn't gone to any warehouse or distribution center. The GPS log showed it parked for 6 hours in a residential neighborhood in Virginia Beach before turning around. Out of a sick, morbid curiosity, I typed the address into Google Maps. A small, neat-looking house with blue shutters. Okay, weird, but not impossible. Maybe a drop-off at a private residence. But at 3 a.m., the uneasiness was a physical thing now, a cold knot in my gut. I started digging deeper, my hands moving with a mechanical purpose while my mind raced. I cross-referenced the GPS logs from the last 6 months with the times Dave had borrowed the truck. A pattern emerged, a horrifying, sickening pattern. Every time he'd tell me it was a local haul. Every time the truck would travel hundreds of miles, often to another state, and every time there was a long, hours-long stop in a place that made no commercial sense, a suburban cul-de-sac, a motel parking lot, a quiet side street. But the final piece of the puzzle, the one that shattered my world into a million pieces, wasn't on the GPS. It was in the truck's own internal logbook. The electronic logging device, ELD, is mandated by law. It tracks hours of service, location, engine status. It's the truck's unblinking eye. I had never thought to check it after Dave used it. Why would I? I drove to the lot, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I climbed into the cab of the beast, my sanctuary, which now felt tainted and alien. I powered up the ELD and went into the history. And there it was. Not just the trips, but the driver logs. Dave was meticulous. He logged himself as the driver. But he'd made a mistake. He'd forgotten about the co-driver function. The system also logs when there's weight on the passenger seat for an extended period. On half a dozen of these solo trips, the passenger seat sensor was active. For hours at a time, my blood ran cold. There was only one person who would be a co-driver on these secret trips. But I needed to see it. I needed to know for sure. The next time I was scheduled for a long haul, I told Sarah it was a run to Miami, a full 2-weeker. I told Dave the truck was his if he needed it. Then I drove 50 miles out of town, checked into a cheap motel, and waited. The day before I was due to leave, I'd gone to the truck and installed a tiny, motion-activated dash cam, no bigger than my thumb, aimed not at the road, but at the interior of the cab. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a notification. The camera's memory was full and was uploading to the cloud. I sat on the edge of the lumpy motel bed, my heart hammering, and I clicked the link. The video was crystal clear. It showed Dave climbing into the driver's seat, and then, a minute later, the passenger door opened and Sarah climbed in. My Sarah. She leaned over the center console and they kissed. It wasn't a peck. It was a long, slow, familiar kiss. The kind you share with someone you've known for years. He thinks you're in Miami. Dave's voice, my brother's voice, tinny through the phone's speaker. He won't be back for at least 10 days, Sarah replied, settling into the passenger seat like it was her throne. Where are we going this time? I was thinking the lake house. It should be empty. The lake house was a small cabin Dave's parents owned, a place he'd taken me fishing a dozen times, a place filled with memories of friendship and trust. I watched them drive off. I watched them laugh. I watched her put her feet up on my dashboard. She looked happy, relaxed, more alive than I'd seen her in years. They were using my truck, my livelihood, as their personal love nest on wheels. They were creating a perfect alibi for him. He was on the road working, while using my absence as their playground. The betrayal was so complete, so multi-layered, it was almost a work of art. I didn't rage. I didn't smash the phone. A strange, terrifying calm washed over me. The kind of calm that comes after the hurricane has passed, and all you can see is the wreckage. The love I felt for Sarah, the brotherhood I shared with Dave, it all evaporated in that moment, replaced by something cold, hard, and patient. They thought they were smart. They thought they had the perfect system, but they forgot the one thing I had that they didn't. They had each other. I had 200,000 brothers and sisters on the road, and the road has its own rules. The road always collects its toll. I closed the laptop. It was time to make a few phone calls. My first call wasn't to a lawyer. It was to a man named Grizz. Grizz was a legend. He'd been driving since before the interstate system was fully paved. He was a mountain of a man with a beard that had its own weather system and a voice that sounded like gravel being poured into a drum. He was the unofficial president of our fraternity of asphalt cowboys. I found him at a Flying J in Cheyenne, Wyoming. I laid it all out. The truck, the wife, the best friend, the GPS logs, the video. I didn't have to embellish or add emotion. The facts were stark and ugly enough on their own. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, a slow, steady rumble. When I was done, there was a long silence. Finally, he spoke, his voice a low growl. "He used your rig? To haul your wife? That's about the size of it, Grizz. That ain't just cheating, Jack. That's a violation. That's sacrilege. What do you need?" "I need to make his world very, very small," I said, the words tasting like ice. "I want him to feel like he's the only man on earth, but he can't escape. I want him to run out of road." Another pause, then a chuckle that sounded like a rock slide. "Son, you called the right place. Where's the son of a bitch headed?" "The lake house," I said. "He'll be there for 2 days." "Good," Grizz said. "Let him have his fun. It'll be the last he has for a long, long time. I'm making the calls. We ride at dawn." The plan was simple in its concept, but terrifying in its execution. We weren't going to touch him. We weren't going to threaten him. We were going to do what we do best, drive. We were going to create a ghost convoy, a rolling quarantine. Grizz put the word out over the unofficial channels, private CB frequencies, closed-off forums, text chains that crisscrossed the country. The story spread like wildfire. It wasn't just about a cheating wife. It was the principle of the thing. Dave had used the truck. He had broken the code. That was something every driver, from the fresh-faced rookie to the grizzled veteran, understood in their bones. By the time Dave and Sarah left the lake house, rested and content, 40 trucks were waiting. They were scattered along a 50-mile stretch of the 2-lane highway leading back to civilization. The first truck, a gleaming Peterbilt 389, fell in behind Dave's rig. Dave wouldn't have thought anything of it, but then, a few miles later, a Freightliner Cascadia pulled out from a side road and settled in front of him. Now he was boxed in. But still, it was just traffic. Then came the CB chatter. It started subtly. "Hey there, northbound Pete. You got a smoky report for me?" "Negative, friend. Road's clear. Though I am tailing a special kind of garbage hauler today." Dave, who always had his CB on, would have heard that. A prickle of annoyance, maybe. Then another voice cut in. "That the Kenworth with the beast nameplate?" "Heard that rig's got some extra mileage on it. The kind that don't show up on the logbook." Laughter from a third voice. "Yeah, heard the co-driver's a real homewrecker." This was Grizz's genius. We weren't talking to Dave. We were talking about him, over an open channel, for anyone and everyone to hear. His call sign, Dust Devil, was suddenly the topic of conversation across the entire channel. They told the story, piece by piece. The trusting friend, the borrowed rig, the secret trips. They never mentioned his name, just Dust Devil, but he knew. And Sarah, sitting right there beside him, was hearing it all. I can only imagine the scene in that cab, the cold dread dawning on Dave's face, Sarah's confusion turning to horror as she realized the story was about them, the casual, mocking tone of the faceless voices surrounding them, dissecting their sordid little affair for the entire world to hear. As they approached the interstate, more trucks joined. 2 became 4, 4 became 10, 10 became 20. A silent, menacing parade of chrome and steel hemming him in. They kept a perfect, legal distance. They never broke the speed limit. In fact, they started to slow down. 65 miles per hour became 60. 60 became 55, a rolling roadblock with him at the epicenter. Horns from angry four-wheelers trapped behind them would be blaring, but the wall of trucks was impassable. Dave's first move was predictable. He tried to get off the highway. He took an exit ramp leading to a small town. The convoy followed. He pulled into a truck stop, hoping to refuel and wait them out. As he walked toward the diner, a dozen drivers, big men who had been sitting in the booths, all stood up at once and walked out, leaving the place empty except for the staff. He went to the fuel pump, but the attendant just shook his head. "Sorry, pumps are out of order." They got back in the truck. They tried another exit. The same thing happened. Every truck stop, every gas station, every diner. He was a leper. The word was ahead of him. No fuel, no food, no sanctuary. The road, his home, had excommunicated him. Meanwhile, my part of the plan was in motion back home. While they were trapped in their mobile prison, I hired a moving crew. I stood in the house we had built together, the air thick with memories that now felt like lies, and I directed them. Every single thing that belonged to Sarah was packed into boxes. Her clothes, her books, her toiletries, her live, laugh, love signs. I was methodical. I even emptied the vacuum cleaner bag because it was her dust. When they were done, I had them place every box neatly on the front lawn. On top of the pile, I placed a single manila envelope. Inside were printouts of the GPS logs, a transcript of the CB chatter I was getting via a live feed from Grizz, and a single high-resolution still from the dashcam video of them kissing. The last thing I did was call a locksmith. For 2 days, the convoy toyed with Dave. They herded him through back roads and deserted highways. His fuel was running low. His nerves had to be shot to hell. The CB was a constant chorus of his sins. I can only imagine the venomous, trapped animal arguments that must have erupted in that cab between him and Sarah. Their romantic getaway had become a claustrophobic nightmare. Finally, on a desolate stretch of highway in eastern Oregon, the beast sputtered and died. Out of fuel, the convoy slowly pulled over, forming a massive, silent circle around my stranded truck, their headlights cutting through the dusk. For 10 minutes, they just sat there, engines idling, a low, collective growl that vibrated through the ground. Then my pickup truck appeared. I drove through a gap in the circle and parked in front of my rig. I got out and walked to the driver's side door. I didn't have to knock. Dave stumbled out, his face pale and haggard. Sarah was huddled in the passenger seat, trying to make herself invisible. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "Jack, how?" "You broke the code, Dave," I said, my voice calm and even. There was no anger left, just a vast, empty space where our friendship used to be. "You don't touch another man's rig. You don't touch another man's wife. You did both. In my house, in my cab." I can explain," he stammered. "No, you can't," I said, holding up a hand. "I saw the video. The whole world has heard the story. Your career is over. No carrier will touch you. No driver will ride with you. You're a ghost. You're done." I turned my gaze to the passenger window. Sarah wouldn't look at me. "As for you, Sarah," I said, my voice flat, "your things are on the lawn. The locks are changed. A lawyer will be in touch." I walked over to him and held out my hand. "The keys." He numbly dropped the keys to my Kenworth into my palm. They felt cold. I turned my back on them both. As I walked away, I made one last call to Grizz. "It's done. We'll get the beast home for you, Jack," he rumbled. A few of the drivers got out of their cabs and headed for my truck with fuel cans. The rest of them just watched Dave and Sarah standing alone on the side of a dark highway, 100 miles from anywhere, with no one to call and nowhere to go. The convoy started their engines, and one by one, the massive trucks pulled away, their taillights disappearing into the night, leaving the two of them in utter silence and darkness. I never saw either of them again. I heard through the grapevine that Dave was blacklisted, just as I'd predicted. He ended up selling used cars somewhere in Florida. Sarah moved in with her sister in another state, humiliated. The road is still a lonely place, but it's not the same. It feels different now. When I pull into a truck stop, I get nods of respect from guys I've never met. Sometimes my coffee is paid for before I get to the counter. They know the story. They know I'm the guy who was wronged and the guy whose brothers had his back. The solitude doesn't feel like emptiness anymore. It feels like peace. I'm still anchored, not by one person, but by the quiet, unshakable loyalty of the brotherhood of the road. And as I drive, with the endless ribbon of asphalt stretching out before me, I know I'm truly not alone. The beast rumbles beneath me, reclaimed and cleansed, and we ride on toward the next sunrise.